I must quote to you and to our listeners an email that I received recently, referring to comments that both you and I made about the scamdemic, berating us
Really?
yes, and I'd like to read it to you and to everybody else. I don't think the person signed it with any name that I can recognize, so I cannot even tell you from whom it is. But let me see if I can find it on my email here. Not signed with any recognizable name. It comes from an email address unknown to me. It says as follows, I quote, "I just watched your latest video, as I have watched every video which you have done with Jonathan Pollard. I find all of your other discussions extremely accurate and well done." Well, thank you, whoever you are. "But as a doctor who has been intimately involved with treating infectious diseases and COVID in particular, you could not be more wrong in capital letters, about the benefits that the mRNA vaccine brought to humanity." Okay. Hang on. You haven't heard the end of it. "I would in fact say that you and Jonathan, who I highly respect, are as wrong about this subject as you are correct about religious and geopolitical issues." All right. "And I would suggest that you stick to what you truly know and can discuss based on experience, and not make a fool of yourselves by wading into territory you are not qualified to give expert opinion on." Haven't finished. "No vaccines are 100% risk-free." That's the well-known shibboleth. The fact that within a few months of these injections being administered, there were more reports on the VAERS system than for all the various vaccines for over the last 60 years. In a few months, many times more is apparently not relevant. It's easy. It's just convenient to simply say, well, nothing is risk-free. That's true. I mean, neither is drinking a glass of water. You might choke. It's also not risk-free. But vaccines in general have been an overwhelming blessing to humanity, which I contest completely. I do not accept that statement, but that's a lengthy discussion. "Saving the vast majority of civilized societies from disease and death." Okay. I accept, for example, that vaccination against measles might save 30, 40, 50, maybe 100 lives of children in the United States in a given year, but cause the deaths and serious injury to tens of thousands. And that doesn't strike me, and that's a fact, for those who wish to know the facts, and that doesn't strike me as a reasonable proposition. He goes on to say, "And the COVID vaccine likewise saved the lives of countless millions, perhaps billions." I think that's
No.
spurious. "I welcome you to do many hours of volunteer service at any hospital should a similar epidemic strike mankind again. I am certain that a first-hand look at reality will be a cure for your arrogance in this regard." So there we have it. What do you say?
Let me just quickly respond to that.
Sure.
He's the same type of doctor that accepted, without any reason to, Pfizer's opinion that the elements that were injected into the site, the injection site, would not leave the site. Well, excuse me.
Remain in the muscle tissue.
Well, excuse me, doctor. Those elements have now been found in almost every organ in the body, including the brain. And to cross the blood-brain barrier is quite a feat.
Every organ of the body is affected.
Correct. Number one. Number two, why is it that, with maybe one exception that I'm aware of, every other government in the world has classified the number of adverse events that have occurred due to this poison, this substance that was injected into the body? Why is that? What are people hiding? Thirdly, and this is very important, as a doctor, you should know this. What we were subjected to, what the world was subjected to, was a global trial with none of the protections that a normal trial, accepted trial, requires.
A medical experiment without
it was a medical, yeah, and this includes
without informed consent.
Informed consent. Why? Okay, the fact of the matter is, the former head of the Center for Disease Control in the United States, under the Trump administration, made an incredible admission a few weeks ago. He said that after a massive epidemiological examination,
to whom do you refer? Can you be precise?
he was the former head of the Centers for Disease Control under the Trump administration. And he said that after a massive epidemiological study of this disease, whatever it was that we were hit with, the world was hit with, it was unambiguously clear that this so-called disease did not present the same kind of lethality that it was purported to have. Just didn't have it. The evidence is clear. The epidemiology is clear. And that even in those groups that were susceptible to any disease, that were immune compromised or what have you, the numbers of deaths attributed directly, not indirectly, but directly to COVID were far less than what was purported at the time. Lastly, the issue of masks, it's bogus. The masks did nothing to protect anybody except to poison them with their own carbon dioxide that was exhaled. Okay? Plain and simple. And if you were a surgeon, you would know that the surgeons wear the mask not to protect themselves from things coming in, but from what they're exhaling. That's why surgeons wear masks. Fact.
To protect,
and lastly,
the person being operated on.
Either being operated on or next to them. Okay? And lastly, let's look at a scenario in New York where I was when this whole issue blew up. The government insisted on arresting 10 men who were vaccinated, who were masked, and who were practicing social distancing in shuls in Brooklyn.
In synagogues.
Yet, they would allow tens of thousands, and in one case, hundreds of thousands of these woke regressives who were not vaccinated, who were not wearing masks, and who were not practicing social distancing from massing and from protesting, God knows what. And the interesting thing is, if you'd actually studied epidemiology when you were in medical school, which you evidently have not, you would have expected after that kind of concentration of unprotected people to see a spike in the number of infections. Well, guess what, doctor? There was no spike. And from an epidemiology or statistical standpoint, why is it that the number of COVID deaths matches the decrease in influenza? Point for point. Why is that? That's not normal. Because when you have influenza...
Not to mention the 10 million or so illegal invaders or so-called immigrants to the United States under this current Biden administration, none of whom are supposedly inoculated or what have you.
Right. If this disease represented the kind of, Armageddon type disease that you think it did, an epidemic scale disease, we're letting millions of these undocumented people come pouring across the border to inhabit our urban areas, where if you really believed that this disease represented the kind of threat that you think it does, we should have soldiers lined up shoulder to shoulder across the border, stopping these people from coming across with any number of highly infectious diseases. But, when my wife, Esther, alayhi salam, went to meet her cancer doctors at the local hospital that she went to, all three of them were double masked. And I sat there smiling.
That was the famous fashion introduced and
Right.
Disseminated by Anthony Fauci.
Yeah. I asked them, why are you wearing double masks? And they said to me, point blank, because we're spreaders. Because after we got our injections of the mRNA vaccine, we pose a threat to unvaccinated people. Okay. I thanked them for their candor. And I said they should be basically stripped of their medical licenses. Because if they actually believed that the disease was as lethal as it was, I said, you're attempting murder. Plain and simple. You're spreading a lethal disease, are you not? And they hemmed and hawed and said, well, some people think so.